The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John.
Glory to you, O Lord.
In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things came to be. Not one thing had its being but through him. All that came to be had life in him, and that life was the light of men. A light that shines in the dark, a light that darkness could not overpower. A man came sent by God. His name was John. He came as a witness to speak for the light, so that everyone might believe through him. He was not the light, only a witness to speak for the light. The Word was the true light that enlightens all men, and he was coming into the world. He was in the world that had its being through him, and the world did not know him. He came to his own domain, and his own people did not accept him. But to all who did accept him, he gave power to become children of God. To all who believe in the name of him who was born not out of human stock or urge of the flesh, or will of man, but of God himself. The Word was made flesh. He lived among us, and we saw his glory. The glory that is his as the only Son of the Father, full of grace and truth. John appears as his witness. He proclaims, "This is the one of whom I said, he who comes after me ranks before me, because he existed before me." Indeed, from his fullness we have all of us received, yes, grace in return for grace. Since, though the law was given through Moses, grace and truth have come through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God. It is the only Son, who is nearest to the Father's heart, who has made him known. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Some of you may not be familiar, but the overall arching theme of the Christmas feast is that Christ, as the light of the world, is coming into a world, has come into a world that is enshrouded in darkness. And the darkness, of course, is the darkness of sin, the darkness of lack of friendship with God, of violence, of fear, of terror, of all these things that in fact make us shrink from our human existence. So in fact, over the four liturgies, the Vigil Mass, the Midnight Mass, the Dawn, and the Day Mass now, we see a gradual and steady unveiling of the mystery of this baby. Last night, the focus initially was on the genealogy of Jesus. You know, the gospel where it's probably one of the most dry gospels. So-and-so was the father of so-and-so, and so-and-so was the father of so-and-so, and it's just really dry and, if I could say, boring to listen to. But it was very important for the Jewish people, and St. Matthew records this for us. And then in the Midnight Mass, the Gospel is about the shepherds going to adore the divine child. And then the Dawn Mass, again, things are a bit closer to the full-blown reality that this is in fact the Word of God incarnate. And then today, in St. John's Gospel, we have the full revelation that it's actually the divine Word of God who has now entered into this child. And this is why I mentioned at the beginning of Mass, this child is a sign destined to be rejected. Today, we gather with millions and millions of others around the world to worship this divine child, Jesus Christ. And millions and millions and millions of Christians have done so over the centuries. Why do we do this? Because we believe that this divine child, or this child rather, is divine, is not just a human child. There are many great human beings across the world, in the history of the world, but these human beings have never influenced the world and human beings as Jesus Christ has. But, like in every other age, this age too has mixed reactions to Jesus, has mixed reactions to the Son of God becoming man. We see it in many subtle and not so subtle cultural influences. How many of you have heard the expression happy holidays for this time? Few smiles, not too many game to put their hands up. Okay. Well, I've heard it many, many times. Thank God I've also heard Merry Christmas. Now, I hate the happy holidays and I love the Merry Christmas. Why? Because there's a subtle undercurrent of something in the happy holidays that's trying to do away with Jesus Christ as the real reason for Christmas. Of course, everybody loves to have a holiday, no? And in Australia, we have 2 public holidays, one after the other. How good is that? But not everybody wants to acknowledge the reason why there is a public holiday. And we as Christians have a responsibility to make that known. To make that known. But as we see in the Gospels, we see that the shepherds are filled with wonder at the Christ child. They go to worship him, and then they see a vision of angels, and they, the angels themselves, who behold God's splendor, are filled with wonder that God has entered into this child. But you know what? A problem that touches our age is that we have lost the sense of wonder. That capacity to be in awe of something. Now, that is a tragedy. Because in an age where we've got so many controls of so many things, technology, and we've got, an influence, we sometimes get the weather right, but still we haven't got that one under control. Most of the time I think we get it wrong, but anyway. But so many things, cars, planes, computers, telephone systems, all these things that have made our lives easier. The fact that we can make a transaction from here to any part of the world using the internet in just a few seconds. And it will work most of the time until it breaks, but that's technology for you. And this has given us a sense, and I might add, a false sense of our own greatness. That just because God has permitted us to actually have certain controls over our lives and over things, even of nature, that somehow we can begin to think that we are absolute. And this is completely false. Because the one who made all the world, with all its mystery and majesty, with all its scientific ingenuity. I mean, one of the things I just share with you, and when I was in Rome, I used to doing a lot of languages and all that sort of thing, so it sort of can get you down, repetition of hundreds of words each day in foreign languages. So in the end, in the evening, I would often like to watch some scientific documentary to just make my brain think about different things. So I'd watch things about the universe and physics and so forth. Well, when scientists talk about the expansion of the universe and the event that's known to scientists as the Big Bang, they have measured and have discovered that the matter has expanded so rapidly, but they've discovered also that if this expansion of the universe had happened too quickly or just a fraction too slowly, the whole thing would not have happened. And this huge number, I'll tell you, but it probably won't mean anything to most of you, 1 quintillion, which means 1 with 18 zeros behind it. A fraction, 1 over 1 with 18 zeros behind it. Something minutely small. If the universe had expanded a fraction faster, it would have just kept on going and we wouldn't see the majesty and the glory that is around us. And if it had happened that fraction slower, it would have imploded in on itself. We look at so many other things. Anyone studied chemistry here? Somewhere? What about the young ones there? Chemistry? Okay. Anyway, well, let me share something with you. I didn't only do like chemistry. I didn't do chemistry at university, but in high school. And there's this thing called Avogadro's number, that whether copper, gold, every element, and one group of it called a mole has exactly the same number of atoms in it. 6.022 times 10 to the power of 23. You know, amazing precision in the world around us. Who on earth keeps this world like this? That little baby that we're adoring today. The definition of a second. You've probably never come across this before, but 7192.631.770 vibrations of the orange line in the spectrum of the cesium-133 atom. That's how scientists define a second. These vibrations going on. And in 1 hour, we'll be here for an hour, just over an hour, there'll be 3,600 of these. What on earth? This majesty in the world around us that is so splendid and extraordinary. This should make us filled with awe and wonder. And then the things on a microscopic level, microbiology. Phenomenal how genes work, how molecules grow. Now, if we've lost the capacity for awe and wonder, if the angels who behold God in His splendor can look upon this divine child and be filled with awe and wonder, then how much more should we be filled with awe and wonder? And if the spectacle of our world doesn't fill us with awe and wonder because the heart has become hardened, then God in all His majesty and the message of Christmas will be lost to us. And that will be an absolute tragedy. What has resulted then in this loss of the ability to have awe and wonder? And I just start with the natural world just as a starting point. And I've just mentioned a fraction of the possible things that could wow you. Our God has made all of this for us. He has made the world in all its splendor for us, because He has made us in His own image and likeness. And what has resulted in this loss of the capacity for awe and wonder? Indifference. Indifference. How many have become indifferent to the message of God's love, God's splendor, God's goodness, God's beauty, that He would come to be born for us as a little child. He could have come as a grown man, but He came as a little child, so that we can see in the helplessness of this child the invitation from God Himself to not be afraid to be where we are and to meet Him in our own wounded humanity. And that eventually this humanity of His was crucified upon the cross because His message was not accepted by everybody. But then He reveals the splendor of the life of resurrection. Indifference is a great killer. It's not only a killer towards our response to the love of God, which shows itself in a life of faith, not only just a regular Sunday Mass, but indeed every day in a life of prayer. But indifference is a killer for all relationships. You just think of some of the relationships of, let's say, married relationships that you know of, and how in the beginning everything was on fire and it's wonderful and it's tender and it's lively. And then as the years go by, what can happen? Spouses can often take themselves or each other for granted. And then the love begins to grow colder. Thank God many marriages are alive and well and vibrant well into the years. And it's wonderful when I see those celebrating their 50th anniversaries, 40th anniversaries, 60th anniversaries. Amazing. But indifference means that we do not care for what is in front of us. And indifference can be resisted. And this is why Jesus came to save us from these kinds of attitudes that will eat away at our very core and make us unable to appreciate His majesty, His wonder, His awe, His splendor. So today as we come to worship Jesus Christ, born for us in Bethlehem, let's listen afresh to that message. That it's this child who calls us to the eternal Father. That this child calls us beyond ourselves to rediscover that capacity for awe and wonder in all of the things of our daily life. Those little ways, those little unexpected things that happen in our lives that help us to realize that we are spiritual creatures made in God's image and likeness. And that in recognizing these things, we will become more reflective, more contemplative, and we will feel the need to come back again and again and again to worship the Christ child, so that in so doing we will discover the eternal Father who sent him to us.